In this lecture, we are going to take up chapter 10 of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You must have noted from the very first slide displayed here that I have given a title to the chapter. Now, keep in mind that there is no title to this chapter in the novel, right? The title that you see here, Frankenstein and the Creature Meet, that is something I have written. So do not mistake it to be something, a title that actually appears in the text. That is not the case. I have chosen or given this title for the benefit of this lecture, keeping in mind that the central action of this chapter, that is chapter 10, is the meeting or the first conversation between Frankenstein and the creature. Right? Now, to give you some context, this is something you already know, but then again, to give you some context, um, Frankenstein and the creature are going to have a conversation in this chapter for the first time. Now, when I say Frankenstein and the creature meet, I do not imply that they haven't met before. Of course, you know from the time when Frankenstein actually gave life to this creature that they had obviously met, but then Frankenstein himself had fled, and the creature too had escaped, and we didn't know until very recently in the novel what has happened to the creature. We know what happened to Frankenstein. He fell sick, then he recovered. He read, Oriental literature. Then he came back home, learned that his brother has been murdered, and it is then that he suspects that it is the creature whom he has given life to is the murderer of his younger brother. But then again, we do not have the confirmation of this information from the creature himself. So in this chapter, chapter 10, Frankenstein and the creature are going to meet, and this is, in my opinion, one of the most important chapters because for the first time we are going to hear from the creature. Frankenstein has passed a lot of judgment, right? And because the novel until this point has been from the perspective of Frankenstein. Frankenstein has already used a lot of epithets: demonic creature, something that Dante could not have conceived, um, miserable wretch, all of these things. A ton of epithets that Frankenstein has already used in the novel to describe his own creation, but we do not know um, what the creature's life has been, what the circumstances of his life has been. So in this chapter, we are going to know that, and in fact, this is the chapter where the creature starts speaking. In other words, chapter 10 is not the chapter where the creature tells his entire life story. In chapter 10, they have the first conversation between Frankenstein and the creature. And from 11 onwards, from chapter 11 to the next few chapters, and the creature tells his life story until the point they meet, right? So with that in mind, let's look at the excerpts of chapter 10. Okay. Now, I have obviously selected some excerpts. So by the time we have come to the point where this quotation, the first one beginning with devil, begins, devil, devil, do you approach me? Do you dare approach me? By this point, Frankenstein and the creature have already met, right? So under what exact circumstances of their meeting are, that I'm not going to tell you. Read the novel and find out. Frankenstein had left his house. He was looking for some tranquility after all the events that went on at his home, with his brother being murdered and Justin Moritz being executed as the murderer. So after all of those events, Frankenstein wanted to spend some time alone. He wanted to stay away from his home. So he goes to a certain place, and this is where the creature meets him, right? The creature follows, and they meet, and this is the first conversation they have. So Frankenstein goes, as in the first quotation here: devil, I exclaimed, do you dare approach me? And do you not fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Begone, vile insect, or rather, stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered. Right? So you can surely see what Frankenstein's emotions are. He's at the very beginning, the first words that come out of Frankenstein's mouth is, do you dare approach me? How dare you approach me? In other words, right? And are you not afraid of my vengeance? as if his vengeance matters to the creature who is many times more powerful than he is. So begone, vile insect. uh, as you can see that the adjectives or the designations that Frankenstein assigns to his own creation are never very parently, right? What parent would call their progeny vile insect? So you see, Frankenstein has no paternal feeling at all, right? So rather than us being able to judge the creature, Frankenstein is only giving us more and more information, and that is only making many of the readers, many of us, dislike Frankenstein, because yes, you create something, you give something life, and then you ignore it. So that becomes highlighted again and again. So he says, "Begone, vile creature," and then he rethinks and says, "Or rather, stay, so that I can trample you to dust." And we all know that he cannot do that, right? And the rest of the novel is actually, ironically, about Frankenstein trying to trample his own creation to dust and subsequently failing every time. So he says that, yes, I truly want to trample you to dust, but then again, would that bring those that you have killed back to life, right? So, and for the first time, the demon, Frankenstein's words, responds. He says, "I expected this reception," said the demon. "All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind." So, first words we hear out of this, within quotes, daemon. Of course, again, to remind you Frankenstein's words, right? Because when we call this creature demon or monster, remember, we are employing Frankenstein's words. Those are not objective comments, those are comments that Frankenstein has passed, and many of us take it for granted that this creature is indeed a demon or a monster, right? As we hear his story, we will find more nuance to his character. We will be acquainted with the circumstances of his life and why he did what he did, and so on and so forth. So it's evident that this creature, he expected this kind of reception, and then he makes a comparison between um, all the wretched people on earth and himself, who is more wretched than anyone else. He says all men hate the wretched, right? The wretched are obviously hated. Now, and I am, in contrast to all the other wretched people, I'm more wretched, many times more wretched. So how much you can hate me? It's only beyond my imagination. And then he says, "Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind." So, one thing that you must note here is that the creature speaks in a significantly different language. He uses archaic phrases like thou, thy. So now, for those of you who have read the entire novel, you probably will be able to know the reason, because you will soon realize that the creature, obviously, he wasn't, when he came to life, he was not imbued with language. He had to learn language. He did not know how to speak from the moment of his birth. And as you will see, the sources of his learning language. One of the books he comes across, among many others, of course, is Milton's Paradise Lost, right? And he inherits that archaic style of writing in those books, and when he speaks, he uses phrases like thy, thou, etc., etc., all of those phrases that he has come across in Paradise Lost, and of course some other books. Now, Paradise Lost is significant because if you note the tone here, um, the creature has the same attitude towards Frankenstein as Satan in Paradise Lost had towards God, right? So this similarity is very conscious to Mary Shelley, the creator, because to romantic authors of the romantic period, poets, novelists, even painters, Satan was a very important character. Satan, he stood for will. He stood for indefatigable will, right? Will that would not be destroyed. So, to many of the romantic poets, romantic authors, romantic literatures more generally, Satan was a very important character, right? And they used to glorify Satan a lot. They used to glorify characters who used to defy gods. If you note the subtitle of this novel, it's called The Modern Prometheus. And at the same time, Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley's husband, had written a poem, a long poem, which he called Prometheus Unbound. Right. So you see, the figure of Prometheus is also one of the figures that recurs in romantic literature, and the reason for that is Prometheus is a Greek character, right, in Greek mythology, and in Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to men, right? Men before that did not know the use of fire. Obviously, this is in mythology. I'm not saying this is how fire was discovered, right? That is a different question which anthropologists can answer. But as far as Greek mythology is concerned, fire is something that the gods possessed, and it was Prometheus who stole that fire and gave it to human beings, right, to improve human lives. And as a result of this, Prometheus was punished, right? He was given eternal punishment. What his punishment was, I'm not going into much detail in this class. You surely can look that up and find out for yourself. But the point I was trying to make is that for romantic literatures, from poets to novelists, even painters, and certainly music composers like Beethoven, right? Um, so for all of these characters, for all of these romantic um, literatures and romantic artists more generally, characters of Satan, Prometheus, these were central characters. They were towering figures whom these people really admired. The romantic authors and artists really admired. So you are going to get a lot of that tone, a lot of the tone that Satan bears in Paradise Lost. You're going to see that in the creature's characterization. Let's now look at the next excerpts. Frankenstein says, "My rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, impelled all my feelings which can arm one being against the existence of another. He easily eluded me and said, 'Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head.'" So you see, Frankenstein, he tries to hit the creature, and even though you and I know that the creature is many times more powerful, remember he is of a gigantic stature, which again is an allusion to Satan, because if you have read Paradise Lost, you will know that Satan had a gigantic stature in Paradise Lost. In fact, he was compared to the tall trees in Norway, right? So many of those epic similes were employed to describe Satan. The result of which was that the implication of which was that Satan was excessively tall, taller than many of the things he was compared to. So similarly, in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, uh, we know that the creature that Frankenstein has given life to is okay. He does look like a human being, right? He's hideous. Certainly, we know that from Frankenstein's own experiences, and we are going to know that as we move up in the novel while reading the novel. But it is also true that in its height and its strength, it is surely gigantic, and perhaps we may call it satanic, right? But whether satanic is good or bad, that is a debate, and we need to know more about the character of the creature before we pass judgment, right? So be careful, your literature students. Do not pass judgment on on the creature just by hearing or believing what Frankenstein has said, right? Remember, you had access to Frankenstein's perspective from chapter 1 till chapter 9. This is the first time you are having access to the perspective of the creature. So do not pass judgment. In fact, definitely do not use the judgment that Frankenstein has passed on the creature and apply it to the creature. Don't do that. That would not be befitting to literature students. So this is something you need to be aware of. So first, let the creature speak, hear him out, listen to the circumstances of his life, and then we'll we can judge whether Frankenstein was correct in calling him a monster or whatever else he had called him. Right? So, as I was saying, the creature has gigantic stature, and no matter how much rage Frankenstein harbors, no matter how hard he may try to hit the creature, there is no way he's going to succeed. And that is exactly what happens. So the creature easily eluded me and said, "Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head." So he's saying, please stop, please be calm. You do whatever you want, but first listen to me. He says, have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest me. Right? So he's saying, you owe me that. You brought me to life, right? You endowed me with life, and you can't just ignore your duties as a parent. This is essentially what he's saying. Um, O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other and trample upon me alone. He's saying, please don't, please don't, you know, consider everyone else as a human and me alone as inhuman. Don't do that. To whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. So he's again and again trying to explain to Frankenstein that you have created me, you owe me this, you are my parent, and you can be good to everyone else, but be good to me as well. Do not trample upon me alone. Right? I should not be the only one you look down upon. After all, I am your creature. Please do me justice. Right? And then he says, remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel. So, if you remember a few moments ago, I told you that he has read Paradise Lost, he is aware of the fallen angels, he is aware of Satan, and the same dynamic that existed between Satan and God in Paradise Lost exists here between the creature and the creator. That is the Frankenstein's monster, so called, and Victor Frankenstein himself, the creator. Right? Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. So remember the first time Frankenstein had left the apartment, he had fled, not left the apartment, he had literally fled in horror, in utter horror. And that's exactly what he's referring to, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed, right? So he had just left the creature alone. So what happened to him after that, we are going to see in chapter 11. He says, the creature says, I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. So you see, the creature has come to his creator like a child to its parent, right? He's again and again using that same logic that, see, after all, you created me, so technically you are my father, right? And do the duty of a parent. Do the duty of a parent. Don't look down upon me alone. You are equitable to everyone else. Please do not trample upon me alone, right? Because compared to everyone else, to me, your justice, your clemency, your affection, everything, all the emotions that are paternal or parental, those are all most due upon me. So do not uh, do not make me the only one that is who is deprived of your justice, clemency, and affection. All the phrases you use, right? So finally, he says, I was benevolent and good, and it is misery that has made me a fiend, which you think I am. So he's saying, okay, I am a fiend. You think I'm a fiend? I'm a demonic or whatever else you think I am. I am all of those. But I am that because of misery, because you were not, because you did not do your justice towards me, because I did not get your clemency and affection. So now give me all of those things, and I shall again be virtuous. Frankenstein's response, and now you will have more and more information to be able to compare these two characters, to see one in the light of the other. Begone, I will not hear you. There can be no community between you and me. We are enemies. Begone! Or let us try our strength in a fight in which one must fall. So Frankenstein, very typical of him, right? He knows the science. He's a great scientist, but his sense of ethics, his sense of justice, they seem very skewed, right? And that is a comment you, I believe, that is very obvious, and that is very obviously derived out of the reading of the text, that Frankenstein may be a great scientist. He may know deep secrets of life and death. He may have the unique ability among all human beings to endow life into a lifeless body, but his sense of ethics, his morals, his human values are really problematic, right? And that problem arises again and again, and it becomes more visible than any time else when he is in conversation with his own creation. So let's move forward. Let's look at the next excerpt. It's once again the creature speaking. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature, who implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? Right? See the rationale here, right? The creature, he's not saying random things, right? He is not a psychopath. That's what I'm trying to say. He has he has good reasons for whatever he's saying. Try and understand the logic of his statement. He's saying, Frankenstein, you, my creator, hate me. You, my parent, do not even, care for me, do not show your affection or love or compassion for me. What will other humans do then? Right? Why should other humans care or have compassion for me if my own creator does not? So you, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? Right? So you who owe me, you don't care for me, and how will others do the same? Right? How will others care for me? Indeed, they spurn and hate me. They is a reference to other human beings. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days. The caves of ice, which I only do not fear, are a dwelling to me, and the only one which man does not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I then, shall I not then hate them who abhor me? So you see, he has two important points that he's making here. First, Frankenstein, you, my creator, you look down upon me. How can I expect compassion from your fellow humans who do not owe me anything? That's number one. Number two, since I cannot live among humans who spurn me and hate me, I live in these places, in these difficult regions where no one else comes and lives. Right, the caves of ice, among desert mountains and dreary glaciers. So if you read this chapter carefully, you will see that um, he lives somewhere in the Alps, high up in the Alps, between glaciers and desert mountains, with caves full of ice. So he lives in a very remote region because, as you will later see in the later chapters, that he has tried living among humans. He has, actually, he spent some time trying to find out, and actually wanting to be in the company of human beings, but he was always abhorred and hated. So he had no way but to find refuge in such difficult circumstances, in such remote locations. So he says, I had nothing to do, right? And these bleak places, these bleak skies are my only refuge, right? And he says that, don't you think, if you, my creator, hate me so much, you are trying to kill me here, you want to destroy me, then what your other humans who owe me nothing and who hate me just by my appearance, right? What will they do then? Don't you think they will take up arms and attempt my destruction, attempt to kill me or destroy me? And will it not be right for me to hate them at that time when they try to hate me? So you see, he's making some very strong arguments here, right? So let's move forward. the creature continues. He says, "Let your compassion be moved, and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon on or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve. But hear me." Right? So, no matter what you do, whether you choose to abandon me or to kill me or do whatever else you want to do with me, do that, but do that after hearing my tale. The guilty are allowed by human laws, bloody as they are, to speak in their own defense before they are condemned. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. So he says, according to human laws, even those are guilty, they are allowed a chance to speak for themselves. They are given a chance to defend themselves in court before they are executed or condemned. So give me that chance, Frankenstein. And then he says, then he makes Frankenstein aware that you call me a murderer, but you want to destroy your own creature. So are you any less than a murderer? Oh, praise the eternal justice of man. Yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me, and then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. So he says, I wouldn't mind if you listen to my tale and then you pass whatever judgment, right? So from the perspective of readers, I think Frankenstein has already passed a lot of judgment, right? And we know now that all of that judgment is incorrect. Because, why am I saying incorrect? Because we haven't even given this creature the chance to defend himself, right? And as he correctly points out, according to human laws, even the guilty are allowed a chance to defend themselves, and only after they have been allowed their chance to defend themselves, judgment is passed. Following which, they are either, whether they are either found to be guilty or they're acquitted. But Frankenstein has not given that chance to his own creation, and he rather wants to destroy it. And it is also true that Frankenstein, who accuses the creature of murder, is actually wanting to destroy the life that he has created. So essentially, he is also a potential murderer, right? So finally, uh, the creature says, if you want to kill me after listening to my story, do that. I wouldn't resist, but do listen to my story. So again and again, see, he says, but hear me, listen to me. So again and again, he's pleading several times in the paragraph that is displayed on your screens. He pleads, right, to be heard. Look at the second sentence, listen to my tale, right? Then again, but hear me. Then again, listen to me, Frankenstein. And then finally, listen to me, right? So several times, this is a prayer from the creature to be heard. Now Frankenstein speaks, right, in response to whatever the creature has said till now. And with this excerpt, we will end our lecture on chapter 10. Frankenstein says, I had hitherto supposed him to be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time also, I felt what the duties of a creator towards his creature were, and that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. So essentially, Frankenstein does realize a few things. He does agree with the creature that he must be given a chance to be heard, right? And he says that for the first time I felt the duties of a parent towards his child, right? And this he has not felt before. So to remind you again, that Frankenstein may be a great scientist, but his parental instincts are not really very favorable as far as his creation is concerned, right? Because his first reaction after imbuing life into this creature was to flee, right? So his paternal or parental instinct is a bit skewed, and yeah, he has not behaved in a parent like manner to his own creation. So overall, he says that finally I was convinced that I'm going to give this creature a chance. I'm going to listen to his tale. So here chapter 10 ends. In chapter 11, we will see the creature speaking. We will hear his tale.